Everyone in the town condemned the poor widow for stepping off the train at the wrong stop, and no one offered her a helping hand. The judge only mocked her and tried to twist her mistake to his advantage, humiliating her in front of everyone. But fate had already prepared its own unexpected answer, and the little girl who clutched her dress became the turning point that changed everything. But just listen to how shocking the twist of this drama turned out to be, and why justice, in the end, prevailed. Subscribe, hit the like button, and watch until the end. The conclusion of this story will not only surprise you, but also leave a wise lesson you'll never forget. The sun was sinking low over the dusty road leading to the settlement of Silver Creek. The plain breathed with heat, and the occasional tumbleweed rolled by like a wandering stranger. On the horizon rose the sharp silhouettes of cliffs, hiding coyotes and outlaws, places where the law rarely reached. Walking down the road was Ryan Caldwell, a farmer and former trail-driving cowboy. A man of 40, strong, with calloused hands, a weathered face, and heavy eyes. Once he had driven herds across half the state, slept in the saddle, and held a revolver longer than a fork. But after the war and painful losses, Ryan turned toward a quieter life. He built a ranch and remained alone. His character mixed sternness with an unexpected gentleness toward the weak. He always said hurting the weak was the lowest thing a man could do. On his way to the settlement, he heard a strange sound, at first faint, like the rustle of grass, then crying. A child's cry, broken, catching on a rasp. Ryan stopped and listened. Off the road, in the tall dry brush, someone was clearly trying to hold back tears. He carefully walked that way. In the thick grass sat two girls. The older was about 9, the younger no more than 5. Their faces were smeared with dust, their eyes red. Ragged clothes hung on their bodies, as if they had been running for days. "Hey, little ones," Ryan said quietly, taking off his hat. "What are you doing here?" The older one hugged the younger tightly, shielding her. Then she raised her eyes, not with childish defiance, but with bitter resolve. She whispered so softly Ryan barely heard, "Take her, not me." The words pierced him. He saw the younger one clutching her sister's dress, not understanding, while the older seemed ready to give up the most precious thing she had. Ryan felt cold inside, as if had been thrown back to the war years, when people had to choose whom to save and whom to leave behind. He dropped to one knee and said, "I won't separate you. Do you hear me? Never." But before he could ask even a single question, hoofbeats thundered over the hill. Ryan stiffened, shielding the girls as he drew his revolver. Onto the road for horsemen, clearly not farmers or travelers. Beards, wide-brimmed hats, worn Winchesters slung over their shoulders. Their faces were hard, their eyes full of greed and malice. One of them, broad-shouldered with a scar on his cheek, sneered, "There they are, the little brats. Thought you could run." The girls pressed into the ground, and the older whispered, "They want to sell us." Ryan understood. These weren't just drifters. They were the kind who lived off the suffering of others. Human traffickers. And their prize now, these two little lives. "Hey, man," another rider said, narrowing his eyes at Ryan. "Step aside. This ain't your business." Ryan stood between them and the girls. His voice held no fear, no hesitation. "Now it is my business." Silence fell over the plain, heavy, like before a storm. The sun was setting, casting long shadows, 4 against 1, 2 small lives behind him, and a single step dividing justice from lawlessness. Ryan gripped his revolver firmly. His heart pounded deep and strong, like a drum. The scarred man spat into the dust and smirked. "Well then, cowboy, let's see just how brave you are." Clara sat on a bench by the tiny depot, still clutching her worn suitcase. The words of the little girl rang in her ears. "Daddy needs you." The girl was already running down the sandy path, glancing back again and again, as if to make sure Clara was following. Clara didn't know what to do. She didn't know this town, if it could even be called a town. A dozen wooden buildings, a dusty street, a few tired horses tied at the posts. Not a single familiar face. "Maybe I really did get off at the wrong station," she thought, anxiety rising in her chest. The letter that had reached her in Ohio said, "I'll be waiting for you at the Dry Creek station." She was sure this was the place, but now she wasn't. Clara stood, clutching her suitcase, and followed the girl. "Wait, sweetie," she called. "Where's your father?" The girl didn't answer, only waved for Clara to hurry. Finally, they turned a corner by a barn, and Clara saw the man. He crouched beside a wagon, fixing a wheel. Tall, broad-shouldered, in a worn hat, his face sun-darkened and stern. But what struck Clara most were his eyes. Weary, heavy, carrying years of pain and sleepless nights. "Papa," the girl shouted, rushing to him. "I found her." The man lifted his head. His gaze fell on Clara, and she felt as if she stood before a judge. "Forgive me, Mom," he said hoarsely, standing to his full height. "My Mary sometimes says strange things. You don't have to listen." Clara gripped the suitcase handle tighter. Her voice trembled. "But she said that you were waiting for a wife." A muscle twitched in the man's face. He looked away, staring into the distance where the sun melted in the hot air. "I was," he finally said, "but that woman never came, or changed her mind." The girl clung to his shirt. "But Papa, here she is." Mary insisted. "She's kind. She'll help." Clara's heart pounded. Everything inside her urged her to leave, go back to the station, wait for the next train. But the desperate fear of loss in the child's eyes rooted her to the ground. The man sighed heavily. "My name is Ethan Holloway," he said, "widower. I have this girl and a farm falling apart without a woman's hand. But I'm not looking for charity." He looked straight into Clara's eyes. "So who are you, Mom? And why did Mary decide you're her new mama?" Clara stood before him, an emptiness tightening in her chest. She had come here to start a new life, and now found herself in a stranger's story, in the life of a widower and his child. My name is Clara Winslow," she whispered. "I was supposed to marry a man from Dry Creek, but I think I got off at the wrong place." Ethan's lips pressed into a hard line. "I see," he said. "So fate decided to play with both of us." Mary wasn't listening to the adults. She danced around Clara, tugging at her hand as if afraid she'd vanish. "Shall stay," the girl insisted. "Papa, say it." Clara knelt in front of the child, brushing her cheek. "Sweetheart, I don't know," her voice shook. "I was supposed to meet another man." Mary suddenly frowned and almost shouted, "All the women leave." "You won't leave." The word struck like a blow. Clara lifted her eyes to Ethan. He turned away, but there was too much pain in his face to hide. He ran a hand over his stubbled cheek and said, "My wife died 3 years ago. Illness took her quickly, and since then everyone only pities. No one stays." Clara's heart ached. She herself had come here fleeing emptiness and loneliness, after her mother's death, after a failed suitor who had seen her as nothing but a burden. She had dreamed that a new life would give her meaning, and now, this chance meeting placed her at a crossroads. "I can't stay," she whispered. "I need to find the one who truly waits for me." The words tore out painfully, like cutting her own flesh. Ethan nodded. "I understand, but if you choose at least to spend the night under a roof, my house is open. The road from here isn't near." Clara looked at his rough hands, at Mary's eyes full of desperate hope, and silently nodded. They walked to the house along a narrow path through dry fields. The farm did look run down, weeds breaking through the fences, the barn roof sagging. Yet in the air lingered a feeling of home, weary, but alive. Inside, Clara smelled wood, ashes, and loneliness. Everything here was arranged for a man and child, but a woman's touch was sorely missing. Ethan set a pitcher of water on the table. "You can rest in the room upstairs." He hesitated, as if choosing his words. "I'm not asking you to decide anything. Just don't crush her hope." At that moment, a voice rang out outside. The harsh shout of a neighbor came from the gate. "Holloway, you hiding some stranger woman? Think we don't already have enough trouble with you barely holding on to that farm of yours?" Ethan spun around, and Clara felt the ground drop beneath her. She didn't know what kind of story she was stepping into, but she knew this. Leaving would now be far harder than simply waiting for a train. The neighbor's voice cut the air like a knife. Clara stood by the window, her heart pounding so hard she could barely breathe. Outside, several men had gathered by the fence, farmers, their faces sullen, used to condemning Ethan Holloway. "You bring strange women here," one shouted. "We know how this ends. First pity, then trouble." Ethan stepped toward the door, but Clara caught his sleeve. "Don't go out. They're not angry at me. They're angry at you." "Why'd?" He sighed heavily. "After my wife's death I refused to sell the land. They wanted to split it among themselves, but I held on, and now every excuse is another stone to throw." For the first time Clara truly saw, this wasn't just a stubborn man, but someone slowly being broken by loneliness and others' spite. But Mary ran out of the room and shouted toward the men, "She's not a stranger. She's ours." Silence fell. Children rarely speak truth so loudly. Clara clenched her fists. A wave of resolve rose inside her. She stepped to the door, opened it, and stood beside Ethan. "You're right," she said firmly. "I'm here by mistake. That if God directed my feet to this house, maybe it isn't a mistake at all." The men exchanged glances, grumbling. Finally someone muttered, "So be it. But remember, Holloway, your farn and your chose, your burden." They dispersed. Silence covered the yard again. Ethan slowly turned to Clara. "Why did you do that? Now they'll hate you too." "Maybe," she answered, strangely light inside. "But I've searched along for where I'm needed. And for the first time in a long while I feel I am." He looked at her for a long moment, as if trying to believe. Then his gaze softened, and in the corners of his weary eyes a warm spark appeared. Mary ran to Clara, hugging her tightly as if afraid to let go. "You'll stay." Clara stroked the girl's hair. "Yes, sweetheart, if your father doesn't send me away." Ethan stepped closer. His voice was quiet but firm. "If fate brought you to us, I won't argue with fate." Outside, the wind rattled the old boards, but inside the house, for the first time in years, it was warm. Clara didn't know what awaited them, but she knew one thing: a stranger girl, a widower with a bitter past, and a bride who stepped off at the wrong stop, had found one another. And that was stronger than any doubt. Sometimes fate throws trials at us that look like mistakes or misfortunes, but in truth, they become the beginning of the most important things in life. That wrong stop turned out to be her only chance to find not condemnation, but family and true love. Those who judged and mocked were left with nothing, while those who chose kindness received far more than they ever expected. And the lesson is simple. Even in the darkest moment, when it feels like all is lost, one outstretched hand can change not only someone's fate, but the entire course of life.